Hello and welcome to this briefing by the Jerusalem Press Club. I'm Jonathan Beck, Director of Content. Our guest today is Begin Sadat Center of Strategic Affairs Senior Fellow Dr. Eyal Pinko, an expert in maritime intelligence, espionage, and geostrategy. Hello, Dr. Pinko, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, and good morning.
So, I can expand on your biography. You served in the Navy and in intelligence for many years, and also in development programs and in engineering weapon systems. And our subject today is the Houthis. So I would like to ask you, first of all, let's address the biggest issue, which is the failure to intercept a couple of days ago, and also why, like last night, there was a siren. When the rocket is intercepted, outside Israeli territory is half the country sent to the shelters.
Yeah.
Let's begin with that.
Okay, so first we need to understand that every missile, rocket, or drone that is being sent by the Houthis is basically Iranian-made. And they are changing the names. They're just changing from time to time the painting on the missile, but it's the same. It's the same armament as Iran. At least in the last few events in the last week, the weapon, the missile, the ballistic missile, was called Bastine 3, and which is the Iranian BM-300. These are maneuvering ballistic missiles, very sophisticated, made by Iran, and the idea is to intercept them above the atmosphere, something like in 90,000 kilometers above ground level. And the interceptor which is being used here is the Chetz, is the arrow. And sometimes, there is no 100% success in interception. It's always, there is no 100% at all. And from time to time, they are missing of the interception, especially when the Iranian Houthis missile start to maneuvering, and the IDF spokesman didn't elaborate how it was missed, but I can assume that they did some kind of software changes, algorithm changes in order to improve the detection, especially for the maneuvering missile and for the interception itself.
Okay, thank you for this. And now for more, substantial matters, the Houthis are now basically the only party, let's put it this way, the only proxy firing rockets at Israel. It's essentially the last remaining threat against the Israeli home front. Israel has struck them, I think, several months ago, over the past week, strikes which are, let's put it this way, presented to the Israeli public as being significant, the port in Hodeida, infrastructure facilities, and yet they are persistent and they continue firing and have been also at war with Saudi Arabia for many, many years. So they're a very strong adversary, not strong, but persistent. What can be done, you think, to diffuse them as a threat to Israel? Where does this lead to?
And maybe we'll start with a threat map as a beginning point. First, we see that there are a lot of movements in the Middle East. Only yesterday or 2 days ago, the Egyptian Prime Minister the president started to present and to elaborate about the Muslim Brotherhoods in the Egypt that is trying to make some kind of changes in the government. And there is started to be riots over there. And in Iraq, from some reason, we'll speak about the reason in a second, but the Shia militia is now saying that they will not fire any more rockets towards Israel in order to keep them quiet and to stabilize the country. We see what is happening in Syria, in Jordan. So what we face now is it's a huge shake in the Middle East. And then trying to look on that in a very high level perspective of the strategic point of view, and then I will come to the Houthis. Everything has happened because Iran pretty much lost control of what is happening here in the Middle East. Hamas, which is still operated, but with much less power. We see Hezbollah, which is already started to gain power from from scratch or from a very low point of view, but Hezbollah is still a very powerful force in Lebanon, and Iran wants to reinforce it in order to be ready for the next round of war. In Syria, the Assad regime collapsed, and there is huge play over there with the US, with Turkey, with ISIS and Al Qaeda. So it's now also in Syria. It's in a stage of trying to understand what will be the next phase of Syria or Syria's nations. And Syria for Iran was a major and very important place of old because this is the bridge for the Middle East and enable Iran to go from Iran, Iraq, Syria to the Mediterranean Sea. It was a very critical place, and Iran lost its hold over there. Iraq, it's a very shaky place. The militia, it's 130 militia forces. Sometimes it's 100 people or a little bit more teams, but in total, it's around 20 to 30,000 people over there. And they want to stabilize because also the US is putting a lot of efforts and diplomacy efforts over there to stabilize the region. So the Iranian point of view is to what we call the proxy warfare. So all the proxies in the Middle East are lost a lot of power in the region. And the only one that left are the Houthis. The Houthis are basically a stream in the Islam, which called Zaidi. The Zaidi is a little bit hybrid between the Shia and the Sunni, and they are being driven not only by Iran and Iranian power and Iranian money and Iranian weapons, but also from a very deep theological belief that also the Jews are the one to be blamed in the kill of Muhammad, in the death of Muhammad. So one of their theological ideas or logic is to fight Israel because they need to kill the Jews, and they're not only because the Iranian issues. The Houthis were fighting the Saudi Arabians and the Egyptians for 8 years, from 2015 and 2022. And they are they are huge force, in something in between 200 to 300,000 soldiers over there. They are very well experienced with warfare. They know how to survive, especially when they had to combat the Saudians and the Egyptians, which, if you sum it up, it's 10 times or 15 times more than the Israeli military forces, and they are over there with the ability to do ground maneuver and to do ground combat efforts, not only aerial strike. The Houthis are very empowered by the fact that for more than a year they managed to hit severely the Egyptian economy, 40% less revenues for the Egyptian economy. They managed to hurt significantly the supply chain for Europe, and therefore, nobody did anything to them. Some attacks from the US, some from the UK, a little bit, 2 attacks from Israel. At the end of the day, never mind what the IDF told us, it's nothing from them. They knew attacks for 8 years from the Saudis and from the Egyptian, and they didn't manage to collapse. So it's for us, maybe for the Israeli public, it's significant, showing some capabilities, very nice Air Force, the Israeli Air Force attacking capabilities, but it's not more than that. It's not a significant attack. Unfortunately, I'm not on the mainstream that's saying that. So that's the main issue here now, that the attacks were not significantly as we thought for ourselves.
Okay, I mean, I'm not sure if they're significant or not, but obviously they've not achieved any success because they are continuing to fire. Now, you mentioned an ideological element. My assumption over the past, I don't know, 2-3 weeks, when every 2-3 days there's like a rocket, usually in the middle of the night, sending Israel to the shelters, was that this is never like, some Houthi general saying, you know what, I'm going to harass the Jews tonight. But they are working on orders from Tehran. But then last week, JPC took some journalists on a tour, and the expert that spoke to us there said they're quite independent, in fact. So can you kind of among these, this is like the Maverick proxy. Can you break down for us, first of all, what are the pressure points essentially? I mean, more of the same strikes that you say were presented to the public as being significant but are not, or is there something else entirely? And secondly, from what you're saying, basically the war in Gaza is not even the real thing because they have this ideological raison d'etre of fighting the Jews that's not going to change even if the war in Gaza ends. So what's the way out of this for Israel without going directly after Iran, the sender of the Houthis?
Yeah, I think that the issue here is the hybrid solution, which means I will say it first from the Houthis perspective. They are fighting against Israel first because of their Iranian proxy and all their weapons, infrastructure, bases, training, everything came from Iran and from Hezbollah as well. They have, for example, 7 naval bases around the shore, which were built by Hezbollah. So first they are being driven by Hezbollah. And except of that, they have their own ambitious, they have their own will to fight the Jews. And the case of Gaza, it's the excuse, it's the trigger that made them go to fight. And once again, they are gaining a lot of confidence because nobody does anything in order to release the maritime siege that they put on the Bab el-Mandeb Straits. So they feel very confident in that. So if we want to fight them and to stop the attacks, I think the main idea is to fight Iran, but I think it's not over there. It's not on the table. So being a little bit more practical than fighting Iran. So I think the practical way is one, to stop totally all the force buildup processes and the weapons that are being delivered from Iran to the Houthis. This is made by the sea, by the maritime routes, and by aerial transportation. Israel with the US must fight it and stop those supply lines. This is one. Secondly, is to fight them in the economical point of view, to make economical warfare, as we call it, and to stop and halt all their bank accounts, straw companies all over the globe. Israel knows how to do it, US as well. And from a very strange reason, which I cannot explain, Israel didn't declare the Houthis as a terror organization. So before going there, Israel must declare the Houthis as a terror organization. Last but not least, and I think it's a fiction, but I think also an ideal way to create a coalition between the US, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Israel in order to fight the Houthis. I believe it will not be, because we see that during the last year, Saudi Arabia and Egypt are severely damaged, the economies and all, by the Houthis' moves, and they don't do anything. It's just like they're watching from a side, don't want to get involved in order not to get, after that, some kind of fight with Iran. So they are trying to be aside. But ideology, if I will speak about ideology and the optimum way to go, this will be the best way to do that. Probably, as I said, it will not occur.
Okay, so I have to ask, I mean, this coalition you mentioned, can you maybe explain, Egypt seems to be one of the main parties being hurt by the maritime blockade. It's a country with a very strong army, Sunni country, kind of natural adversary to Iran in the region, and yet the Saudis have been fighting the Houthis for nearly a decade and not succeeding, their own wars separately. Can you explain perhaps why Egypt has not been more proactive in trying to block them, because their economy suffers so much?
Yeah. First, as you said, I think we need to emphasize that the Egyptian naval force over there is huge. They have over there a helicopter carrier with 50 Kamov 52 helicopters, attacking helicopters. They have marine corps over there. They have huge armada. So they have a huge, really, of course, F-16 aircrafts, dozens of them. Yet Egypt didn't do anything in order to release it, as we spoke. And I think that, and while of course, the Egyptian economy was damaged, 40% less revenues when the basic bread prices in Egypt rised in 300 or 400%. This is a poor people over there. That's the reason probably they start to go against El-Sisi government. I believe that the fact that Egypt didn't want to go inside and to do something against the Houthis is, first, they are playing a double game. From one side, they don't like Hamas, they don't like the Houthis, they don't like Iran. Understatement. This is their enemies, and they are being trained and equipped in order to fight Iran. Yet they don't want to go into a war, and there are some rumors started to came this morning that El-Sisi went to the Israeli government to ask for the Israeli government help if something will happen over there with the Muslim Brotherhood. It's only rumors. I don't know if it's more than that. So I believe that the Egyptians are playing duplicity here. From one side, they want that Israel will be strong and fight Hamas. They don't like Hamas. From the other side, they want to show some kind of Arab proud and Arab coming together, and they don't really want to start or initiate a Middle Eastern war with Iran, and that's the reason I think that they are accepting losing the income from the Bab el-Mandeb Straits for a lot of money and not going into a large escalation or for a large war.
Okay, I see. I want to go back to something you said, which is, going after Iran, because there've been reports in the Israeli media, I think on Sunday, that the head of Mossad is consulting the prime minister that indeed the pressure point of the Houthis is a strike against its patron Iran. Now, I'm not sure whether these reports are, psychological warfare, considering that Israel and Iran have exchanged direct fire. It's not likely that Israel is now planning to perhaps go after Iran and attack, some random facility somewhere. I mean, there's a sort of a scale of escalation. So, what to make of this statement by reported statement by the Mossad head? Would he mean, go the big game now, strike against Iran like Iranian nuclear facilities or like significant army facilities in order to get them to stop the Houthis?
Yeah, I don't know how much it's a rumor, as you said. Some reporters said that the head of the Mossad said that. I'm not sure it was said by him. Knowing him personally, I don't think he really said it, but this is my estimation for that. I think that if you look on the arena now, Iran it's in a very weak point. The proxies are now somewhere on the ground level. They lost a lot, the infrastructure, the forces, and they need to have time in order to build themselves once again, and it will happen if we will not stop it. But it looks that it will happen. Being
even let me just interrupt. Even with Hamas, you think?
Yes. You see that Hamas is controlling the streets in the Gaza. You see Hamas is fighting the Palestinian Authority in Jenin and in other cities. Hamas is there. Hamas raised his head again. There is we didn't destroy Hamas. Hamas controlling the north, the east, the center, and the south part of Gaza is controlling a lot of many of the territories of the Palestinian Authority. So Hamas is there, but still, it's not as it has the power a year ago. And Iran needs to rebuild its force, the proxies. Iran, it's in a very, very difficult economical situation now. The supreme leader is about to die, and there is a lot of political movement inside inside Iran, who will be the one that will replace the supreme leader? His son, his grandson. There's a lot of fights over there. So it's the political and the economical situation over there is not so good in Iran. This is the second thing. And the last one is that Israel, I think, have a lot of breath from Trump coming into power. And the fact that Trump in the past imposed sanctions on Iran 2018, 2020, which are really damaging Iran, really damaging the nuclear power program, really damaging the Iranian economy. I think that Israel has a lot of, as we call it, a backwind in order to say that the situation now, that's the best and the optimum time to attack Iran if Israel is considering that. This will be the optimum moment. As you said, I don't believe that Israel will go to this stage. I don't believe that Israel will attack Iran, its oil infrastructure or the banking system or whatever, the nuclear facilities. I don't think we are there. But if we will consider the optimum time, this will be the optimum time for that.
Okay, so you mentioned indeed, the new administration coming to the White House. We've seen the election of Donald Trump the second time as a kind of a powerful, like a magnetic force almost for many events around the globe. Do you think specifically, zooming a bit out from Iran and back to the Houthis in Yemen specifically, because the U.S. has been involved in those strikes in the past. I mean, the U.S. Army is already invested there. Do you think that is going to change under the Trump administration? Perhaps, in a way that will help Israel finally defuse this threat?
Yeah. See, we have a lot of expectations from the Trump administration. I think the average Israeli is very keen that he will come into power and counting the time. I do believe that Trump has his own motivations. It's unclear. It's very blurred, and he's a very unexpected person. Yet, I think he understands the situation well. He already threatened many times that when he will come into power, everything should be in place, and everything should be in quiet after, and the war should be ended in January 20. This is not the situation as we see that now. We don't see that in Syria, in Lebanon, with the Houthis as well. And yet, the fifth and the sixth U.S. navies are over there in Bahrain, in Bab el-Mandeb. They are there, and I will say they will lead the international force over there that supposed to protect the maritime trade in these routes, which they don't do in a big success. Something like 100 ships or merchant ships were already hit by the Houthis. So, by the numbers, it's very unsuccessful, this task force 151, as they call it. I really hope, once again, it's very hard to estimate or to assess what Trump will do, but I really hope that Trump will be, as he is, convinced and keen to take down the Houthis, just in favor of the world economy, for the favor of the world supply chain. And I think we will be much smarter in 1 month from now.
Okay, I want to just refer one last time to something you mentioned earlier in the briefing. You spoke of a sort of a coalition that doesn't exist yet, of a Middle Eastern coalition of Israel, Egypt, Saudi Arabia,
Yeah.
and Jordan, I think, and that would amount to essentially sort of a defense treaty. So, I mean, do you think something? Let's put it this way: who would chaperone such a four-way agreement? Would Israel be kind of the leading force coming to the other parties, or would the U.S., or is it just like an abstract idea?
I think what I mentioned is that from my perspective, this will be the ideal solution. This will be the vision. I think we are very far from that to achieve it. But if when Trump will come into power, and the Abraham Accords will be on the table once again with Saudi Arabia, I think it's possible. It's not now, maybe it will be 1 year from now, but it's possible. And this kind of coalition should be led by the US, not by Israel, as a superpower and the force that is balancing the area. Maybe 1 year, but if I'm just what I mentioned is, if I see what will be the major and the optimum force to take down the Houthis, this will be the major force. And once again, I don't think it's realistic for now. It's only the optimistic. We say that pessimistic, it's optimism. It's optimistic with experience. So now I'm still pessimistic.
Can you say why you think such a that's really the last question, and then we'll close. Can you say what would such a coalition achieve that Saudi Arabia, with American weapons, has not managed to achieve in almost a decade, since 2015?
Yes, they fought against them since 2015 until the peace, the ceasefire treaty in 2022. I think that the main issue here is that the resilience of the home front in Saudi Arabia was very low, and they could not, at the end of the day, the Houthis hit over their airports and the oil reserves and the oil wells and etc. This is one. Secondly, from the military point of view, the military maneuver of the Saudi Arabian military was very poor, relatively. And if you want to fight against the Houthis, you need to go to Sana'a, the capital of Yemen. Without military force, ground force, not aerial force, ground force that will go to Sana'a and to fight against them, this regime will continue, the Houthi regime. So, and the Egyptians and the Saudi Arabians didn't do that. And we saw for many years that aerial strike cannot win a war. We saw that during the 2006 war, the second Israeli-Lebanese war. We saw that in other operations, aerial force cannot achieve the goals of the war. They cannot win. You need to have boots on the ground and to go to Sana'a. Without that, and I think that this is the reason the Saudi Arabian military didn't manage to win over the Houthis.
Okay, I understand. Thank you very much, Dr. Pinko, for this briefing.
Thank you so much.
I would like to thank BIU spokesperson Ilana Oberlander for setting us up, and my colleague Alina Or for giving us tech support here at JPC. Thank you very much to the journalists for joining us.
Thank you, and Merry Christmas.
And Merry Christmas to all our non-Jewish listeners. Thanks.